I started my activism in 2009. Yeah. So I'll give a brief history to my work.
Yeah, do that.
I was born in Luton in 1982. Luton's a town that's 30 miles north of London. When I was born in 1982, there was one mosque. There's now 45 mosques. Okay.
How big is Luton?
It's 200,000 population.
And how many mosques?
45.
Okay.
45. Luton was named by the CIA as the epicenter for terrorist activities across Europe. The fertilizer bomb plot was planned in Luton. The 7/7 attacks, they got their bombs in Luton. The Stockholm bomber was radicalized in Luton. Terrorist attack after terrorist attack has orchestrated and come from Luton. Now, growing up in Luton, as I said, when I was born, I've seen all of this. Yeah, Al-Masradeen, you know, Omar Bakri, Abu Hamza, their head office. They used to have an organisation called Al-Masradeen, who were not they're now a prescribed terrorist organisation, but they never were. Their head office was in Biscuit Mill in my hometown. So growing up, I had a very life lesson of the influence of Islamist ideology and what it can do to freedom. Yeah? Also, the grooming gangs, which is something we'll get onto. So my cousin was a victim at 14. She was hooked on heroin and raped. She woke up being raped by gangs of bearded men in the Muslim community. She ran naked through the streets. Now, what the police done at the time is nothing. Yeah. So I grew up watching.
How old were you when that happened?
I would have been 13. So she was 14. So as all this is happening, and just so people get, Luton is one of the most diverse towns in Great Britain, one of the most diverse towns in Europe. Yeah. So white English are a minority. Okay, most of the people I love are not white because I've been brought up in this community. Yeah, so as I've been brought up in our school playground, when I went to school, you had the Muslim playground and the non-Muslim playground. So I had a very quick learning, and then when you go into the school,
why were they segregated?
Well, they segregated themselves. The Muslims did not integrate or assimilate. So when you go into the school dinner table, just so people can picture it, you'll have whites sitting with blacks, sitting with Indians, sitting with Sikhs, sitting with Hindus, all sitting together. And in the corner, there'll be 10 tables of Muslims. Yeah. Now, I never understood it as a child. Okay. It was from when I went to high school, I just knew the Pakistanis are very different. Yeah. They're quite hostile. If you mess with one, you've declared war with the whole tribe. Yeah. There's not a fair fight. There's never a one-on-one fight. It's all gang related. And so I just grew up learning it. But that's not to say, because some of the best people I met in my hometown were Muslim lads. Yeah. Some of the people I loved were Muslim lads.
Dr. Jordan B. Peterson sits down with Tommy Robinson, an activist deeply concerned about the rise of Islamic jihad in Europe. Robinson begins by discussing the significant changes in his hometown of Luton, England.
Group are there openly promoting hatred, yeah, just openly sending people to fight for the Taliban, recruiting people. So the Stockholm bomber, who was an Iraqi Muslim who come to university in Luton, was a nice young man till he come to Luton. Yeah? Then, when you're vulnerable, at your most vulnerability, away from home for the first time, in university, they pounce.
Yeah, that's typical cult behavior.
This is so they pounce, and they got him, and then he went and blew himself up. Yeah, so these groups have been operating. So I organised a protest called "Ban the Luton Taliban." Yeah, well, I actually I gave a presentation at Oxford University.
When was that?
That was 2004. So I gave a presentation at Oxford University because I made leaflets. And if you dig up the leaflet, which I'd done for my Oxford University presentation in 2004, my rhetoric has never changed, okay? So the leaflet was put as front page of our local newspaper. And what I said is, whites and blacks are being religiously and racially targeted in this town, yeah? No one's doing anything about it. There's a total two-tier policing operation in this town where they get away with what they want. The Islamic community get away with what they want. The police do not know how to deal with these problems. I went on to say that they use drugs as a weapon against our community to get our children into paedophilic practices, which is what's now known as grooming. Now, when I made this, and I was a young man, yeah, and I organised it with my friends. We go to football together. Luton's one of the most. It was voted the roughest town in Great Britain. Yeah, it's a rough place. But
what makes it rough?
They were hat makers.
We were hat makers.
What made you rough?
That's all that mercury.
That's the history.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Luton's it's a poverty-stricken town with a lot of problems, regardless of Islam. Luton has a lot of problems. It's a rough environment. The levels of violence are as high as anywhere in the UK. What you grow up thinking is normal actually isn't normal. You grow up with a level of violence in your school, on your streets, or the way to solve things is through violence. And it's a poor town, yeah? So I organised this group. About 200 of us turned up, Englishmen, and for the first time it worked. The terrorist group weren't there. Yeah? The jihadists weren't there that day because we were coming. Yeah? And the police locked it down. But what happened from that point?
The police, tell me what they did.
No, the police, on this day, the police turned up. We went to Don Miller's. The group weren't there. We then held a little protest at our council building, saying we need to get rid of these terrorists. Yeah, this was before 7/7. This is before any terrorist attacks in Great Britain. The terrorist attacks we've seen, so 60% of the Muslims in Great British prison, in Great Britain's jails, are ex-members of this group in Luton. Yeah, so
Okay. So you actually had put your finger on them.
I put my finger on them, and I named in the leaflet. What I named in the leaflet was the link between the street drug gangs we have a gang called the Gambinos. They're not very original. They're a Pakistani group, but they've called themselves the Gambinos. And 4 years later, the national newspaper. So in 2004, I named them in my leaflet, and say we've had enough of the gangs with their heroin, and we've had enough of the jihadists all combining. And what happened after this was I was targeted by the gangs, not by the jihadists, by the street level drug gangs who were drinking alcohol, gambling.
When he was born in 1982, Luton had 1 mosque. Now it has 45. This rapid growth of mosques coincides with an alarming increase in terrorist activities, including the 7/7 London bombings and the Stockholm attacks.
Everybody, I'm talking today to the dread Tommy Robinson. And my wife, who's going to join the discussion, she had something to do with this. Tammy and I have been following Tommy for quite a long time, years really, probably 9 years, maybe longer than that, wondering just what the hell he's doing and what he's up to, watching his exposure, particularly of the grooming gangs in the UK, which is like the darkest story that the most demented imagination could possibly posit. So Tammy was going to interview Tommy, and I wanted to meet him, and then he got arrested in Calgary, and I talked to Tammy a bunch about this, and we watched his latest documentary, Silenced, together, and I felt that it would be more than useful for us to both do the podcast, and so that's what we've done. And so what did we talk about? Well, we talked about his arrest in Canada, right, with no charges, and we talked about, well, his past since 2009 up to 2018 and what he's been through and why. And we talked about the rally that's going to occur in London on July 27th and much else as well. And so join us for that. So, Mr. Robinson, my wife and I have been following you a long time, trying to figure out what the hell's going on and what you're up to. And so you've just run into a spot of trouble, you might say, in Canada.
Welcome to Canada.
Yeah. Welcome to Justin Trudeau's Canada. Yeah. So maybe, why don't you start with what happened in Calgary and what you think happened, because no one really knows.
So I went to Montreal. I spent a week in Montreal. I met Gad Sad. I met Ensaf Badawi. I've been in contact with that family for 10 years. Went for dinner there. Then I travelled to Calgary.
That's the family of the guy who's trapped in...
So Raif Badawi,
yeah.
He put a statement online in Saudi Arabia saying Jews, Christians and Muslims are equal. That's what he said. He was prosecuted. He got 10 years in prison, and they kept trying to do him for apostasy. So they were trying to sentence him to death. He was sentenced to 1,000 lashes. Now, this was in 2011, 2012, and that was at the start of my activism, but I was in contact with Raif and his family. So he had 3 children, same age as my children. And I've just visited his family. To know that he still hasn't embraced and be able to hug his family still now is insane. Yeah. And there was a fight for his freedom, and Canada gave his family, who at the time, I was in contact with them back then.
Robinson shares his experiences growing up in a segregated environment. In school, there were 2 playgrounds, one for Muslims and one played a significant role in the discourse about Islamisation in Europe, offering several points that he asserts highlight the risks linked to this issue. His viewpoint addresses several key elements such as national safety, cultural assimilation, economic consequences, and political beliefs, which collectively underpin his perspective.
How do you feel about Brother Tate becoming a Muslim now?
How do I feel about him becoming a Muslim? Disappointed. Tate's a genius, yeah? He's a very clever man. And what he's doing now, he's always done. Yeah, he's tried it with multiple different... So Top G, he had Mr. Plenty before that. Have you seen his rap song?
Yeah, it's awful.
Oh, bruv.
Yeah.
Like, I've done some fuck-ups in my life, man. I wanted this on the podcast. Say, bruv, I've fucked up sometimes, man, but what the fuck? But, so Tate, everything he says, so it's like Katie Hopkins.
Oh, do you know each other personally, right?
I know Tate, yeah. Right. Yeah, Tate's from Luton. I know him. I went out to Romania. I went out there in 2017, spent a few days out with him. But he's and Tate's mentor is a man called Amir, a Muslim man, Bosnian Special Forces from Storm Gym. Very well respected. No one would have everyone I speak to, because my friend is one of the main trainers at that gym. Everyone likes him, yeah. Muslim, non-Muslim, he's a great guy. Tate, I think, puts a lot of his value comes from the teachings of that man as well, yeah? And his guidance from him. So everything as Tate carried on talking over the years, I'm thinking, well, that's Islamic. That fits in with Islam. That fits in as he's talking about what he sees and women and his views on multiple wives and all of these things fit into the teachings of Islam. And Islam also, at this time, is the only group, Muslims are the only group in the UK who will stand up against the LGBTQ plus sexualization of children. That's the only group of people. They're very principled in their values and they will not back down. Yeah, they don't bend. Islam ain't going to bend.
Isn't that a good thing?
Yeah, for them.
Because you're similar to you as well.
No, it's fair. Yeah.
You have your...
Yeah, I respect certain things.
The resilience.
The resilience and and it will not bend. You'll bend before Islam bends. Yeah? Your country will bend. Your laws will bend. Islam won't bend. The Muslim community will not bend. I don't know if you've seen this story. So Muslims are protesting outside the schools in Birmingham about the LGBTQ plus thing. Yeah,
He believes this segregation stems from the Muslim community's choice not to integrate or assimilate into broader society.
just come from everywhere and they battered everyone. Yeah, and there's a picture in the national newspaper and they're jumping on this boy's head, and underneath the picture it says a fascist is attacked by anti-fascists. And I remember looking at it going, what? I remember I had an awakening to everything because I went from working on a building site, yeah, to 6 months later leading the biggest protest movement Europe's seen. And when we went to Birmingham as a group of 50, we had English Defence League tops on, and it said Luton Division, the name of our town. And these images went everywhere of English men getting chased and beaten, yeah? So this was Birmingham, and our first banners said, "Victims of jihad in Nigeria, we stand with you." Because obviously I was down the rabbit hole. So I was seeing that on Christmas Day, five Christian churches were blown to pieces, didn't make the BBC news, yeah? I was following all these stories around the world of Christians facing persecution at the hands of jihad, no one caring, yeah? So we went to Birmingham, we thought, let's highlight a lot of issues here, yeah? Let's make this a point. And we had banners, we had placards, but we got violently, the police had to lock us in a building for 2 hours because they couldn't control the streets. Then they got buses and put us on the buses and to get us out of there, and all the windows were coming in, there was riots going on. So from this, we then went back to Luton, and then we saw a Christian church in Manchester that had been taken over by Muslims, which there's been another video go viral just weeks ago, similar situation. It was in the area of Longsight, and they were bulldozing over Christian graves and headstones. So I was watching it going, like, they can't do this. How come no one's talking about this in the town? Where's the local political voice? Where's the politicians? Now, the thing where people said, because we took to the streets. Now, we went from a group of 50 men in Birmingham being violently beaten to going on all the messaging boards of English football clubs, then turned up in Manchester. And I was like, when we got there was thousands of young Englishmen had come from everywhere. And from the start, because of the violence in Birmingham, the men had come with an attitude of, no, we're not backing down, okay? So that was sort of the start and the birth of the English Defence League, which every city we went to, there was a justified reason for going, yeah? But no one ever spoke about that. And then I realised very quickly that everything I'd seen in Luton, everything I'd talked about in Luton, was happening in every town and city. So then I started meeting families that their daughters were missing for weeks. And then I started hearing all these stories, and it's one thing to read about grooming, and that's why I made a 5-part series, the one you talked about that you watched, because you don't get to feel the pain. I'm sitting with a mother, a father, and a brother whose 13-year-old daughter's been missing for 5 days, and the police are doing nothing. Now, so I remember going on big chat shows in 2009. Jeremy Paxman was the most feared BBC presenter, and he had a show called Newsnight. And when I went on, everyone was all our opposition at the time, and I was terrified again. And it was the first time so my family had been crying since the time I started my activism, because my mum was threatened with her job. There was violence, police raids, terrorist attack, terrorist plots. So my family were begging me to stop. And I went on this Jeremy Paxman show, and I said to him, like, I don't expect you to understand, but I expect you to listen, okay? Our daughters are being taken. They're being groomed, they're being raped, they're being prostituted in every town and city, yeah? And he said, you expect us to believe, and it hasn't aged well for him at all, because in the early days, we were condemned as fabricating stories, and and making this up. So you understand the level. I met a father from Blackpool. The gang took his daughter, okay? The father and the son would ring his phone and he'd have to listen whilst they were raping his daughter. Yeah? These levels, so you understand, and in 2015, so we go across the country, and I've done a presentation called The Rape of Britain, as well as documentaries, and I go back to us marching through Telford, and now the arrest rates for these crimes, if you do a graph, it goes like this, there's none, yeah?
As Robinson grew older, he became increasingly aware of radical Islamic jihadists infiltrating his town. These extremists often collaborated with local street gangs involved in drug and human trafficking.
Radical Islam. The aggression, the booze, the football hooligan element, he claims, all of it wrong, and the extreme right-wingers.
I've gone out there and I felt a little bit ashamed of how we carried ourselves off in England, but at that time it's what was needed. We were young and we were angry.
Instead, he says this is the way we go in the UK. 40,000 gathered for a Pegida rally in Dresden. Robinson was on stage there and is now launching Pegida in Britain.
You say you want to stop Islamic immigration?
Yes.
Right. What about building mosques?
We need to stop the building of mosques temporarily. The same with the immigration. Look, we'll assess it again in 5 years' time. If we've got to...
So 5-year ban on immigration if you're a Muslim, 5-year ban on building mosques.
Yes. The majority of people in Britain are concerned with the Islamification of the country. The majority of people are concerned with the effects literal interpretation of Islam is having.
But Robinson's now the manager, backstage. So meet the would-be frontman, former British soldier, then fighter with Kurdish forces against the Islamic State, or Daesh, but a wannabe leader who wouldn't give me his surname before the cameras rolled.
No leader of any movement that's gone anywhere doesn't give their full name. What's the problem with that?
No, I will give them a second name in the future. So,
what is your second name?
Scott.
Scott?
Yeah.
Right, okay, fine, we'll clear that one up.
Yeah.
That obstacle removed, we got on to what really worries Pegida.
And it's very important the truth gets out there. That's the most important thing.
What is the truth then that we're missing here? What's the big truth?
The big truth of what's going on around the country.
Yeah, what is it?
With girls getting groomed. Okay, these are facts.
Okay, girls getting groomed, what else?
The youth getting radicalised within Islam. There's so
Since 2004, Robinson has been vocal about these issues, criticising local law enforcement for their failure to address the growing problem.
Hometown where he's still facing problems.
Oh, yeah.
From this lie. But the thing is, I should have played the film. I should have just played the film. And I didn't play the film because I, for the first time, worried about consequence. I should have played the film, and it's ate me up for years. And the film was never played, but it was played in America 2 years ago, yeah? 2 years ago it's played in America. Now they've come for me. Why have they come for me now? I held a rally on the 1st of June. No, I come back to, so I'd stayed out of the UK for a year since, with all of this. And I stopped. I wasn't in a great place either. And then I come back. I think Elon Musk gave me back my account. Now, my activism and my journalism took me, in 2015, I started my activism in 2009, yeah? So I'll give a brief history to my work.
Yeah, do that.
I was born in Luton in 1982. Luton's a town that's 30 miles north of London. When I was born in 1982, there was one mosque. There's now 45 mosques, okay?
How big is Luton?
It's 200,000 population.
And how many mosques?
45.
Okay.
45. Luton was named by the CIA as the epicenter for terrorist activities across Europe. The fertiliser bomb plot was planned in Luton. The 7/7 attacks, they got their bombs in Luton. The Stockholm bomber was radicalised in Luton. Terrorist attack after terrorist attack has orchestrated and come from Luton. Now, growing up in Luton, as I said, when I was born, I've seen all of this, yeah? Al-Mujahideen, you know, Omar Bakri, Abu Hamza, their head office, they used to have an organisation called Al-Mujahideen, who were they're now a prescribed terrorist organisation, but they never were. Their head office was in Biscuit Mill in my hometown. So growing up, I had a very life lesson of the influence of Islamist ideology and what it can do to freedom. Yeah? Also, the grooming gangs, which is something we'll get onto. So my cousin was a victim at 14. She was hooked on heroin and raped. She woke up being raped by gangs of bearded men in the Muslim community. She ran naked through the streets. Now, what the police done at the time is nothing. Yeah. So I grew up watching.
How old were you when that happened?
I would have been 13. So she was 14. So as all this is happening, and just so people get, Luton is one of the most diverse towns in Great Britain, one of the most diverse towns in Europe, yeah? So white English are a minority, okay? Most of the people I love are not white because I've been brought up in this community, yeah? So as I've been brought up, in our school playground, when I went to school, you had the Muslim playground and the non-Muslim playground. So I had a very quick learning. And then when you go into the school...
Why were they segregated?
Well, they segregated themselves. The Muslims did not integrate or assimilate. So when you go into the school dinner table, just so people can picture it, you'll have whites sitting with blacks, sitting with Indians, sitting with Sikhs, sitting with Hindus, all sitting together. And in the corner, there'll be 10 tables of Muslims. Yeah. Now, I never understood it as a child. Okay. It was from when I went to high school, I just knew the Pakistanis are very different. Yeah. They're quite hostile. If you mess with one, you've declared war with the whole tribe. Yeah. There's not a fair fight. There's never a one-on-one fight. It's all gang related. And I learned...
Throughout the interview, Robinson provides a first-hand account of living in a community deeply affected by the rise of radical Islam. Discusses the challenges faced by residents and the difficulties law enforcement encounters in addressing such a complex issue.
There's a guy I recently saw online named Tommy Robinson. In an interview with Jordan Peterson, he discusses how he's been fighting jihadism all along and how Great Britain is waking up to the challenges that jihadism brings, and the open immigration policy, how Muslims are coming in and destroying London, destroying, the entire Europe, slowly but surely. And he talks about how he's fighting back against those dark forces. Check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments below.
Since October 7th, there's been a mass awakening. So all the things we've warned about, like every interview I've given has aged very well for me. Every issue I've spoke about has come into fruition. Not because I'm a genius, not because I've got anything special. It's because I was born in a town where I witnessed what mass open border Islamic immigration will do. Yeah? I know what's coming. I've got 3 beautiful children.
Yeah.
If anyone's got to fight, I'll fight.
Yeah.
They're not fighting.
Yeah.
And what our cowardice is currently doing, we've bred a generation of cowards who care about themselves. Yeah. So, and half my friends were the same. I'm all right.
Yeah.
I've got enough money. I'm okay. You can't keep running from this problem. This problem isn't going anywhere.
That's right.
This problem is going to explode. And on October 7th.
In fact, the longer you run from it, the larger
the harder it's going to get.
Absolutely.
Yes,
100%.
And October the 7th really woke a lot of people up to see, not it happened in Israel, but to see the level of hate in every university, to see that our institutions have been taken over, to see the level of aggression and the celebration from not just a handful. We're not talking about handfuls of extremists. We're talking about the mainstream.
We're talking about the Democrats.
Yeah, the Democrats, the Labour Party, and we've seen a massive. So there's been a real wake up. And I have my messages. If I go through them every day, are full of people who said I hated you. Yeah. I thought you was a thug. I thought.
Yeah.
And I'm not perfect, and I've made mistakes because that's human. And what I've done the whole way through my activism and my career, and now my journalism, is whenever they've tried to stop me talking, I think, no, that's not like you. If you tell me not to do something, I will do it. That's always been my way. It's my character. Yeah. Tell me not. So, and I'm right. And I remember my wife's dad saying, "Stop, please stop. Like, do you not see the danger here?" I said, "Am I wrong? Am I wrong?"
Yeah.
No. So why should I stop? Well, because they're threatening us. Because they're trying to intimidate us. So every bit of police threaten this incident in Canada. Well, that doesn't deter me. You locking me up, even if you want to put me in jail, it's not going to deter me. If you're going to put me in prison now for this film, and I can't understand they make the same mistakes every time.
Yeah, it's amazing.
You lock me up for this film, yeah? I hope every single person in the world talks to me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I hope you bring more eyes to that film. So I'll go to jail. Jail for me is a terrifying... I might not come out of that prison sentence. And if I do, I'm going to do solitary confinement, which is going to fry my head. But I've gone through 15 years of this, yeah? And I am committed to it. And I think that when I say they have underestimated the human spirit and certainly the British spirit, yeah? And what you saw...
I hope so.
What you saw on the 1st of June was the British spirit. And what you're going to see on July 27th is...
What are we going to see on July 27th?
You're going to see the largest gathering of unified British public that they've seen.
All right, hope you enjoyed that video with Tommy Robinson. Godspeed to him, and hopefully he can continue the fight against jihadism worldwide and continue to warn the world about the truth.
Robinson's insights highlight the dramatic changes in Luton over the years and the broader implications for need for open discussion and effective measures to tackle the threat of radical Islam.
Every British person today is offended with people shouting Allah Akbar!
Tommy speaks the truth.
About what?
About, I think you know what about. Islam, Sharia law.
Anti-Muslim activist with a history of violence and criminality who was sent to prison for breaking the law.
We don't want any more mosques in this country!
Tommy Robinson is currently wanted under the Terrorism Act 2000. That's right, you heard that correctly. Tommy is wanted by the UK police using the counter-terrorism legislation. The very thing he has spent his life preaching against is what he is now wanted for.
The majority of people in Britain are concerned with the Islamification of the country. The majority of people are concerned with the effects literal interpretation of Islam is having.
A senior judge has issued an arrest warrant against him after learning that he has left the country on the eve of a major legal case against him. Allah tells us in the Quran about people like Tommy Robinson in the following verse. Allah will throw their mockery back at them, leaving them to continue wandering blindly in their defiance. For those of you who are not aware about this Islamophobe, Tommy Robinson is a popular, far-right, anti-Muslim, and anti-immigration activist who has worked tirelessly for decades, attempting to demonize Muslims and ethnic minorities who live peacefully in Britain. He is also the co-founder of the EDL, English Defence League. His hateful marches across the UK, in which thousands of like-minded racist, thugs, and Islamophobes come together and chant anti-Islamic slogans, mocking the religion of Islam and making fun of the Prophet of Islam, can be seen all over social media. While accusing Muslims who follow their religion of being extreme, he himself is now the convicted extremist who is wanted for terror charges in the UK. Is this not a just punishment for the one who incites hatred and violence against innocent men, women, and children, who only wish to live their lives in peace? This Zionist puppet is finally getting a taste of his own medicine. He is a known liar and criminal.
We don't have to stop radical Muslims, we have to stop his...
This interview offers a sobering look at the realities of living in a town transformed by extremist activities and the ongoing struggle to maintain safety and cohesion in such communities. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and for more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel.